Rip Van Winkle was a friendly man who lived in a small village surrounded by beautiful mountains. He was liked by everyone, but he had one big problem: he was very lazy. Instead of doing his work, Rip would often go to the mountains to relax and spend time with his friends, trying to avoid his wife's constant complaints. He does odd jobs for others and plays with children. He is attentive to everything but his own, which constantly frustrates her wife. His farm is chaotic and poorly managed, and the land produces less and less farm each year. The condition of his children reflects his general indifference to his responsibilities. Rip's idleness can be seen both in his dog Wolf and in the society held in the village cabin, where the other men sit and chat about the day's affairs without much enthusiasm. Headmaster Derek Van Bummel reads out all sorts of news, and innkeeper Nicholas Vedder guides opinion through his pipe smoke. One night, Rip rests with his dog in the desert after squirrel hunting. He sees a stranger dressed in vintage Dutch clothing climbing the hill towards Rip, carrying a barrel on his shoulder. The stranger asks Rip to help, which Rip does despite being surprised by the man's appearance. Hearing what he thinks is thunder, Rip follows the stranger through a ravine, where he sees strange-looking men dressed in similarly aged clothing happily playing a game of skittles called Nine-Pin, a game similar to bowling. The players stop playing as the stranger man approaches them and fill their cups with liquor from the keg. They drink and return to their game, though Rip is startled and distressed by their appearance. Finally, Rip tries the liquor and finds it to his liking. After more than a few drinks, he falls asleep. After waking up, Rip finds himself at the place where he first saw the barrel man. He worries that he slept there all night and expects her wife to scold him. He discovers that his beloved gun is gone, replaced by rusted and damaged pieces of a former rifle. Unable to find his dog, he decided to return to his village. Rising steeply, he wanders through the forest again, but the path is blocked and he cannot find the pit. Dissatisfied with the loss of his dog and the prospect of seeing his wife again, he leaves for home. When he returns to the village, he notices that people are dressed differently than he is used to, and those who recognize him seem to be stroking their chins. Stroking his own chin, Rip discovers a foot-long gray beard. When he moves around the village, he finds it changed, bigger, more populated, full of children he doesn't know, and names he doesn't recognize on doors and businesses. He begins to fear that the drink has confused him so much that he does not recognize his village or is somehow in another village. On the way to his house, he finds it in ruins, surrounded by a strange dog that growls at him. The house is empty and it seems that no one has lived there for a long time. Hoping to find a familiar relic, he goes to a tavern, but it too changes. It is now the Union Hotel, its flagpole replacing the large tree that stood outside the tavern he frequented. The flag flying at the top of the flagpole is the American flag, and the King Georgian portrait has been replaced with a portrait of George Washington. Instead of a group of idlers sitting quietly outside the door, there's a lively crowd, including one man who is talking loudly about political concerns that Rip doesn't understand. Rip's strange appearance and unusualness attracts the attention of the crowd. When asked which side he voted for in the election, Rip doesn't know what everyone is talking about. When Rip asks for his friends at the tavern, he is informed of their fate: 2 dead, 1 in Congress. It is also revealed that Nicholas Vedder has been dead for 18 years, indicating that Rip has been gone for at least that long. Shocked, Rip asks if anyone knows Rip Van Winkle. Someone in the crowd point to a young girl, and as Rip thinks about her, he realizes that this young girl looks exactly like him. When asked about her name and her father's name, it is revealed that she is Rip's daughter, and she explains that her father disappeared 20 years ago and has not been seen since. Rip asked that young lady about her mother. "Where's your mother and what is she doing now?" When questioned, she tells Rip that Lady Van Winkle died recently. Rip shouts that he is her father, then looks around to see if anyone remembers him. An older woman recognizes him by name and asks about his long absence. When Rip tells his story, the audience is skeptical. However, the village agrees to let Peter Vanderdonk decide whether or not story is reasonable. Vanderdonk is the oldest person in the village and knows the history of the area as well as the folklore. He describes the surrounding mountains as being inhabited by strange creatures. He also claims that Henry Hudson and his crew, legendary explorers of the area, come back every 20 years to visit and make sure the land is still in good order. In fact, Vanderdonk's father had once seen them, dressed in their old-fashioned clothing, playing 9 pins, a game similar to bowling. Vanderdonk himself says that he once heard the thundering of their bowling balls one summer afternoon. This wise testimony seems to validate Rip's story in the eyes of the townspeople. Rip moves in with his daughter and her husband, whom Rip recognizes as one of the children he used to play with in his youth. He takes walks and sits outside the hotel, telling stories about the time before the war and learning more about how the world has changed in his absence.